Hello and welcome again to another episode of Nerf News, your number one source for Nerf news on the net. I'm your host Drac, and this is Jinx. Say congratulations, Jinx. She's up to 9 whole pounds. That's this many. We're actually very proud of her. That means that she's starting to get to a healthy weight, and I think she's going to be around for a long, long time. So we're pretty stoked about that. I was going to talk to you today about the upcoming Ultra 2. Just as much corporate nonsense, but honestly, a much cooler, much more refined shell design. This one looks pretty good, and while I was originally going to do what my sister Cheese did and show you some blueprints, as of this morning, we have the ability to share with you some actual box art of the blaster. So let's dive right into it. So before I show you the box art, I do just want to talk to you very briefly about the blueprints I have. In the blueprints, we were starting to do some speculation. Cheese and I were going back and forth. We talked to Ryan from Silver Fox Industries, and we kind of figured out exactly how the semi-auto trigger mechanism was going to work. And that looked pretty cool. Here's a rough diagram of how that kind of gear operation should torque to push darts into the barrel system, which is going to be, if I know anything about Hasbro at this point, an exact copy of the flywheel system from the Ultra 1. And that is unfortunately a real shame. That's the biggest letdown in this blaster, is that I don't anticipate them fixing anything, which means that these range claims are still absolute fallacies. One good thing that did come out of the blueprints is that Cheese put an amalgamation of all the different Ultra designs for different darts together, and it's kind of interesting because it looks like they originally were trying to just avoid people copying their ammo, and then complicated it to the max. And then, as I've mentioned before, they had to do just a ridiculous amount of iterations to get anywhere close to their range claims. And so it's not proper science at all. And we wound up with the absolute garbage polypropylene darts that we have for the Ultra line. It's kind of amazing to me that given that blaster's performance, they are continuing forward, but I imagine that we're going to get at least 4 Ultra blasters before they can this. Simply because they've already put them into production and they've already spent so much money on the marketing of this disaster. However, let's take a look at the Ultra 2. So the first thing that jumps out to me about the Ultra 2 is that I think the Ultra 2 looks like a Mateba or Mateba. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I fell in love with it during its kind of pseudo sci-fi appearance in Ghost in the Shell back when I was a wee vamplet. But the Autorevolver, the Mateba, is awesome. It's essentially a semi-automatic revolver. It fires from the bottom cylinder, just like the Ultra 2. It's got a very sci-fi sort of look to it. They're ridiculously expensive. It's like kind of on my dream list for my armory because they're very difficult to come across, and when they do show up on like Gunbroker, they tend to be very pricey. However, that's sort of what the Ultra 2 looks like, and it's definitely going to be the first paint job that I slap on it. Not for public wars, just for cosplay purposes. I think that it's going to be a very handsome recreation. So, what do we know about this? Well, the front of the box gives us a really good look at the blaster. It tells us ages 8 and up. It tells us that it's motorized, which is important. Because it's going to be a flywheel blaster. That's how it's achieving this semi-auto performance. It tells us that it only comes with 6 darts, which is in sticking with sticklers over at Hasbro. They don't want to give you too much of their 50 cents a pop ammo. That would be ridiculous. Then, unfortunately, they're not correcting their lies. They're still saying that this is a 120-foot blaster. It is not. If you're watching my channel, you know that we value integrity, particularly to you over everything else. So you know that, like, I'm going to tell you the truth. This is going to perform a lot like the Ultra 1. Now, one thing that's really interesting is that the battery requirement for the Ultra 2 is 6 AA batteries, which is in some ways better and in some ways worse than the 4 C batteries that the Ultra 1 was powered by. Just knowing Hasbro, I don't think that they changed the tooling on the cage. So what they're effectively doing is changing the voltage that's being delivered to the likely same motors in the same delivery system. And so they might get slightly better performance. However, those motors are pretty robust. And all I'm hearing there is that these AA's are going to burn out like that. Not offering a rechargeable battery pack for a blaster that you're pitching as premium, that you're putting gold on, that you're delivering to people in this sense, is just, it's almost criminal. Like, those batteries are going to get you through barely any shots, and the performance might be increased because what Hasbro's effectively done here is realize their mistake and is delivering a voltage modification to customers, kind of sneaky style. But I just don't see those 6 AA's keeping up with the milliamp hours required to power this for an entire day of play, and I think that that's going to be a real shame, and we'll certainly test that when we have our hands on one of these. So all we really get from the front of the package is that 120-foot range lie. We get the 6 darts, barely enough to fill the blaster. At least there isn't any onboard storage for this thing, although I imagine that people will make a 3D printed attachment for it eventually. And then we get the nonsense about the batteries, which your mileage may vary. Maybe that's good for you. I know for a fact that I'll be modifying mine to take lipos, and that'll at least keep it alive a little while longer at a much higher voltage level. So we'll flip it over to the back. We get more lies about the Ultra Dart, which at this point is just to be expected. In fact, I've got no doubt that the side of this box is going to say #1 blaster brand, which is just the modus operandi at this point. But the thing that you really see here on the back that's interesting is because they're trying to still implement this dart DRM for their Ultra Darts in an attempt to not get knocked off on Amazon, they made it rear loading. And that's where you messed up, Hasbro. You done it again. So while Hasbro calls this technology fast back reloading, we've been calling it rear loading since the old Maverick days. And rear loading is awesome because it makes it easy to drop your cylinder on a Maverick and load from the rear without having to turn your blaster around and load from the front. It means flawless chambering every time, all the time. And while the Maverick's day is certainly done and there's no drop cylinder for this, rear loading is awesome because it does let you reload very quickly from the back, almost like a real steel sort of cylinder. I think that it's really, really cool. And we've proved in the Ultra 1 mod guide that breaking this dart DRM is not the end of the world. Now, the biggest issue from the Ultra 1 mod guide is that it doesn't really fire micro darts very well. So what's going to happen is that somebody, and maybe I'll do it, maybe Michelle and I'll work on it together, is going to have to go to the lab and figure out what cage geometry turns this into a micro dart firing machine. We're going to have to dial it down, but then we might actually, this blaster might be good for modders because we have effectively a rear loading semi-automatic revolver in a compact shell that looks really cool, that should paint up very nicely once you get rid of all the glitz and glamour, and could be very good in terms of its overall electronic performance if only we could just remove the Ultra gimmick entirely. The ammo's really bad, the gimmick is stupid, and the DRM is kind of a pain, but if we can get it down to a normal pusher, we can get it firing 50 cal ammo, which is superior to Ultra ammo in every way, except possibly waterproofing. I think that this one could actually be pretty okay. And I'm looking forward to testing it out, getting my hands on it, and cranking some cool stuff out for you guys. So that's our first look at the Ultra 2. It's not quite as doom and gloom as the Ultra 1, despite the fact that I think that it suffers from a lot of its predecessor's flaws. Again, a lot of that is marketing. A lot of that is just bad design. However, it's a modder's paradise, boys. It's a revolver. You know how I feel about those. It looks like it's going to spin well, and it looks pretty cool. So let me know in the comment section down below, like, what do you think of this? What do you think it should cost? We still don't have a price on it. I imagine that this is one of those SKUs that's probably going to be about $30. And if it's $30, I think that it's fair. If it's anything more than that, I think that it's exorbitant, but that's neither here nor there. The only other thing that I wanted to mention is that tonight I'm going to be working in my workshop. We can do some live Q&As. I'm going to be on Twitch. I'm very excited to be home. I'm only home for a little while as I have to fly to Indianapolis tomorrow, but I've got some amazing content to make for you. And if you want to check out that new rival revolver, it might be on Twitch is all I'm saying. I'll see you there, guys. Much love. Nerf on. Drac out.